Hi, my name is Omar, and I work in the energy sector. My question is, you mentioned that for a PPP to work, the government and the private sector have to have an alignment of their interests. What are some of the strategies that you've used in Kenya, for example? Can you shed some light? Thank you.
Governments being governments, wherever they are, okay, this is not an African issue. Maybe more so skewed in Africa because of reasons that I can dwell on quickly, but they always, maybe the media is a little bit blamed for that. Private investors equals crooks in the mindset of government. During the peak of what we call the private involvement in Egypt, you'll see the top star in comedy producing movies that showing basically this businessman that is, you know, corrupting right, left, and center. I don't know if anyone has any background about Egyptian cinema. Cairo is called the Hollywood of the East. It used to be a huge export because of the language. So Arabic movies were Egyptian production was exported all over the Arab world. And we're talking back from 1927, which is the date of the first Egyptian movie production. So that obviously trickles in all the Arabic word speaking, and I blame Egyptian media for creating that perception in the Arab world about private business. A lot of it is, you know, stuff that makes good comedy, but it's not there in reality. It is telling that the largest single person who has spent money on the 5,000+ Egyptians who got injured during the revolution is a lady that comes from a very big investor family that works in electrical cables in Egypt. So that she spent more than the Egyptian government post-revolution on those 5,000+ injured during the revolution. So, you know, a lot of that is media, but the general perception by host governments that, you know, you're coming here, okay, let's count my fingers. Again, there is good reason for that. I mean, it has happened before, a lot. I think the issue is, in our experience with our involvement in RBR, I don't know if that is known or not, we basically made a point that 2 delegations, one from Kenya and Uganda, comes to Egypt to visit Citadel and see our investments, that it's not a bogus setup. Second thing, it's very important when structuring the PPP as a government. You as a government, you want what? You want, in this case, you want to improve the railway service, yeah? And that was the case in the concessioning agreements originally done. So don't give a concessionaire real estate as part of the deal. Give it to him the right to use as for railway, but not the right to use commercially, for example. Same applies with power, okay? So how you structure, you're supposedly offering IPPs, independent power procurement agreements, because there is a power shortage, yeah? So make sure you structure it in a way that that the private operator doesn't benefit from efficiencies or inefficiencies on the fuel side, the feed side. So it's just, the alignment has to come from what is the purpose of this concession, what is relevant to that concession, and what is not relevant to that concession. Now, it's very relevant for me as a concessionaire of railways, for example, that we have an alignment on the tariff, on the concession fee. So if I'm today, it doesn't matter to KRC or URC if I'm moving or not, as long as they're guaranteed X million dollars every year in concession fees, that's set up for failure. And that has been the case in most of the other concessions. It's not in this concession, okay? That doesn't say we have issues. We do have issues, but they're less so compared to other railway concessions. And mind you, we were really not around when this concession happened. So, as I said, it had a lot of history, most of it bad, sadly. The second relevant thing is to make sure that that concessionaire is only going to make money if he delivers the service. Okay. Now, we as the controlling shareholder in this business, we do not have steel mill, so we don't produce rails. We don't have rolling stock manufacturing process. We're not into forward freighting. We're not a transporter of goods in this part of the world. So we have zero interest. We cannot, having spent 200 or 300 million dollars of debt and equity, we can only make returns if the railway functions. Okay, and that's part of the due diligence. Just quickly, the reason this happens more in Africa than it happens in the West, that perception by governments, is simply that it's the way governments have developed in this part of the world, and that includes Egypt, by the way, is that to be able to control markets, you own assets, which is a very stupid proposition, because that's not, a government is never going to be as efficient as a private sector operator in anything, okay? That doesn't mean I'm promoting an Adam Smith type of government. What I'm saying is government should invest heavily in regulatory, okay? You, as a graduate from university in Nairobi, you should be really thinking whether should I join Safaricom, Chase Bank, or KRC. You should have that option. KRC should be such an attractive proposition to new, bright, young graduates. That is the real investment, not investing in a railway and definitely not investing in cement plants. Okay? So, but however, developing countries develop because it's much more difficult. In order for you to be interested in working in a government entity, regulatory body, you know, A, they have to be paying you very well. B, the whole education system and infrastructure has to be able to accommodate to the quality of people that would work there. So in Egypt, starting 2003, 2004, there was a business-friendly government in place, okay? And they realized that it's hopeless. We can't basically fix, or at least in their mind, we can't fix the education system in Egypt. What they did, they created a special cadre called the consultants, okay? These are well-educated, rounded people, including experience in working in international banks. Central Bank of Egypt is a case in point. So they hired them as consultants, shadow managed, basically, but with completely different packages and setups. Obviously not very healthy environment given the not so lucky employees. But the point I want to make is governments need to invest in regulators, not in assets. This is much more efficient, much longer lasting.
I want to know, how did Citadel come about? The company, the story behind Citadel.
Citadel basically is a number of professionals within investment banking and commercial banking that came together in 2004, myself one of them, and we did one of those deals that comes only once in a lifetime, basically an acquisition of a complete disaster of a cement group who had over-leveraged substantially before our involvement, and cement prices, we had a mini crisis in Egypt in 2001 to 2004. During that period, cement prices went down. They had very inefficient financial management, so they racked up more leverage. Basically, that company was in default on everything on its liability side, including dividends that they had declared and not paid. So a complete disaster. We managed to, and then the owner of that business coincidentally passed away, 2 daughters, not in the business, not living even in Egypt. So we knew that company very well. So we basically managed to raise just enough equity and leverage that to acquire that group. Okay, we weren't the highest offer. We were competing against Lafarge, against I think at the time Ital Cementi. But the point is, we made an offer of, you know, take the money and don't show us your face, whereas the other companies presented an offer that, you know, had 20 pages of reps and warranties for 2 girls in their 30s who have never done business. One is a journalist, one is a child psychologist, obviously not interested in 20 pages of reps and warranties that can land them in jail later on. So they accepted our the third largest, best offer, which was ours, no strings attached. And that's how we started. That business we acquired, went around restructuring very quickly. And one of the bidders, Ital Cementi, came back and offered, but during that year of restructuring, cement prices had really started picking up in Egypt. There was very little available capacity in Egypt to be sold. This was actually the only one, 4.5 million tons of gray cement. And they came back 1 year later offering basically 10 times what we paid for the whole group. So good luck. So that's the basis. That's the base of Citadel's capital. That's what was reinvested later in other deals. So that's how we came along.
You have put a lot of emphasis on Mombasa and Nakuru Kampala railway line. In our area, Mount Kenya region, the railway line there has been so much neglected that the freight charges, especially when you want to transport your horticulture or the cash crop, that is usually